Josh, we end with Josh with a very fresh presentation, I'm sure. We haven't talked about digital nomads so far. Something very close to my heart. I think I'm the first digital nomad in Italy, or maybe in the world. I don't know, but I remember I was traveling. I was in Bali in 2001 with a laptop, and people were charging me electricity because they'd never seen a person with a laptop working somewhere. Like, you lost your office or what?
There was a guy on a bike who used to cycle around in the 80s.
In the 80s?
Like this IBM computer.
All right, because I'm not the first.
Side.
Like, yeah, anyway, close to my heart. And
it's in a museum now.
The little video we showed you before is very close to digital nomads. So let's hear it from Josh. Yep.
Awesome. So I believe
sorry, Josh, I'm going to give you the timing. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So I believe I'm the last speaker of the day.
You are, yeah.
He's probably getting a little bit tired, so I'm going to try and go through this. I know you pointed at the watch, but I'm going to talk about digital nomads, decentralization, and a new type of emerging organization called a network state. The topic there is digital nomads and decentralization, and how we could potentially move beyond borders into a new type of organization. Can you go on to the next slide, please? So I'm going to start off with two truths. The first being, we cannot be fully decentralized within the existing infrastructure in the world. So within governments, financial infrastructure, social infrastructure, it doesn't work to move to the true ideals of Web3. The second truth being, Web3 architecture is required if we want to achieve independence and decentralization. I think this is a given. Next slide, please. So, if anybody doesn't know, I'm pretty sure most people in this room will know, but I just want to start by saying, what is a digital nomad? Like, if you Google it, the dictionary definition is a person who earns a living, working online, moving around the world, traveling as they work. But I think we can all translate to mean live life on your own terms. And this has been something that has been evolving over time as everybody's kind of figured out that there's probably a better way to live than just staying put in one location. Next slide. So a little bit of history. I think in 1997, the digital nomad term was first coined. It was in a book by the same name. And even before that, you know, there were concepts of being a digital nomad, such as the guy cycling around on a bike with a kind of computer taped to it. It's now worth $1.2 million, and it's in a museum somewhere in Silicon Valley. Right. In 2007, Tim Ferriss launched the 4-Hour Workweek. That book, if anybody's read it, it's a brilliant read, was centered around the whole concept of being able to optimize your life, launch a business in a way that requires you to not really need to spend much time of it. And the way that Tim Ferriss did it was that he was optimizing to be able to travel the world. And I'm not sure if his work week was really 4 hours, considering he was an author, podcaster, YouTuber, you know, started about a dozen businesses over time. But it proved that there was a certain demand in the market, because that book was, I think, a New York Times bestseller, and it kind of sparked a little bit of revolution in people. People realized that, okay, maybe it is possible to actually live outside the typical 9 to 5. I think it was the first sort of popular culture, mainstream media, where this concept of being a digital nomad really took off. And I think around the time, maybe there were 1,500,000 digital nomads worldwide. So going forward to, sorry, one back, please. Going forward to 2014, Nomad List launched, and this was a project by Levels.io. He's got a fantastic Twitter account all about indie hacking and creating your own projects. But Nomad List was the first time somebody built a platform, an online community, and a tool helping digital nomads explore the world, discovering places, kind of providing cost of living for particular destinations, how many nomads were there, well, you know, and you kind of view charts of how things have fluctuated over time, and it's a really source of data. The proof of concept for this was it was a very fast-growing market, and there was a community of, I think, around 10,000, 20,000 nomads who used to organize meetups through the site. Moving forward to 2023, 45 million digital nomads, predicted to reach 120 million by 2030. Obviously, this has been accelerated by the pandemic, but if you were to take digital nomads and kind of view them in the same lens as you would a country, digital nomads as a whole are the fastest growing country or group in the world. Faster growing than Pakistan, faster growing than India, faster growing than Nigeria. And I think the GDP of that group would be around $1.2 trillion or so. Next slide, please. So, moving on from digital nomads to the next thing I want to introduce, kind of raise hands, how many people know what a network state is? Yeah. So but maybe about a third of the room, okay. So just to kind of give it a very basic premise and then move into a more kind of deeper look a little bit later on. A network state is an online community that are aligned around a common goal. It could be a group of chefs who want to create the best recipe in the world. It could be a group of people who are health fanatics and they want to create a new society organized around health and kind of moving away from the drugs and the food that people do in normal society. Or it could be a group of digital nomads. And that transitions eventually into an independent group which has political autonomy, is recognized by countries as an independent state. Next slide, please. So the characteristics of a network state, this is something introduced by Balaji. Some of the characteristics that you could say it definitely has would be it has land that it owns. It has a real estate footprint. This could be crowdfunded from its members. It could be a decentralized network of land, so crowdfunding apartment buildings in 20 cities around the world. Or it could be a central capital city somewhere. But one of the key features of a network state is that it does have to have actual physical land, not just the metaverse. Another characteristic is that it's based and optimized around a community. So rather than a country which you're born into and you have no choice, these self-organized communities have arisen because people are highly aligned around a certain principle. I think everybody has the experience where they don't agree with everything that their country does. You know, there might be certain laws, certain politicians who you agree with some of what they say, but not all of it. The premise of a network state is people choose to be in one, and their communities optimized around a shared goal. And they have a recognized founder as well. Political, so they have diplomatic recognition, which means that, you know, the same as any kind of nation state in the world, they are recognized to be independent from other bodies, from other network states that exist. So why do this? And I think that the reason why you might decide to join or start a network state is the same reason that 45 million people have decided to be digital nomads. It gives you a sense of freedom and optimizing your life, whether it be financial or community or social or just seeking some other kind of purpose. But the why of both of those things are the same. Why would you just uproot yourself from where you've lived your whole life and decide to travel for 9 years? Because you're seeking something else that can't be provided by just staying put. I think that same reason can translate over to why you might want to become either a participant or a founder of a network state. It's an interesting and a new phenomenon that I'm starting to see. So again, just diving into a few different things that network states might be able to provide, one of which being freedom. Freedom to choose the community, choose the laws, choose the financial situation that you put yourself in. And into the financial situation side of things, for example, you could imagine a community of digital nomads who, like Portugal, create a new kind of tax system where they charge 0% tax for their members. I think Portugal, a bunch of South American countries, I think it's about 17 countries overall now have instituted a 0% tax status for digital nomads. So countries are starting to become very competitive and trying to attract digital nomads who are kind of seen as like, there's some dispute about, you know, what they're doing to the housing supply and prices, but overall countries are deciding that it's a net positive to have digital nomads involved in your country. They bring innovation, they bring businesses, they bring startups, they're spending money there. It's overall a net positive thing. So one of the financial reasons would be, you know, you can create a new tax system based within an existing country, benefit from the local infrastructure, but have a kind of a differently organized way of doing things. And then the final one would be identity. And kind of jumping on an NFT example here, say the Bored Apes, one thing that taught us all is that people were willing to spend enormous amounts of money just to feel part of an online community. You know, there's expectations of further financial rewards, the same way there might be expectations of certain financial rewards if you're in a network state for early members. But it proved that people have a very strong sense of online identity. I think the longer that you spend online, the average right now that we all spend on phones is maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. And I think that's predicted to get to 8 or 9 hours by 2030. As people spend more and more time online, our identities start to converge with our online personas. And that's expressed through social media, as it has been for the last 10 years. But it's also now starting to be expressed through the NFTs that you have, the profile picture on your account, different communities that you're a part of. I think a network state takes that concept that people have come to expect in Web3, and it takes it up to a new level. The same way that a DAO, you know, is an extension of an NFT project, because it allows people to participate in these communities, which people have shown they're willing to do, but in an entirely new way. So how does Web3 apply itself to a network state? What are some of the technologies that make this possible? In governance, code is law. So you can create a sort of a smart contract which could act as a constitution, for example. You could have the whole concept of code is law originated from cryptocurrencies. They're immutable, once on the blockchain, always on the blockchain. You could apply the same to creating governance laws. The DAO, or the leading kind of body of organization within a network state, could vote to change them. You could have elected representatives by casting your on-chain vote. The same way that you would have an on-chain census. So another defining thing, I believe, of a network state is to have an on-chain census, which defines how many people are in the network state, what their potential on-chain assets are, what land is owned, and have that digital footprint that can be compared between different places. I think one of the biggest problems I find with existing countries is that it's a black box, what goes on inside government. None of us know what our governments are spending money on. They might try and spin a certain narrative and say things a certain way, but we have no idea if that's the case. If you kind of moved that on chain, you would be able to actually see transparently what money is being spent on, what the net ROI is, and I think smarter minds would be able to apply themselves and open source the solutions to some of our country's problems. For example, assets, you could have NFT deeds, whether for virtual land or physical land, everything is there transparently on the blockchain. You can see who owns what, there's no backdoor deals happening, there's nothing going on behind closed doors. It's there, it's transparent, and I think that's how governments should be run in this hypothetical network state. Same thing with proof of citizenship. Whether you buy an NFT or you buy a token that represents you gaining citizenship into this network state, you'd be able to verify that on chain. You wouldn't be able to fake it. And again, with transactions, a cryptocurrency could be set up, which could act as the new native currency for a given network state, and that would be able to align people, I think, a lot better, which I'll speak on in a second. Same thing with virtual commerce. So I want to just speak for a moment about the value alignment paradox. Essentially, I think that's kind of touching on what Maxim said earlier about paperclip maximizers and profit maximizers. Currently, businesses have a fiduciary duty to act as a profit maximizer, which is in misalignment with what a given customer or a citizen might want. Cryptocurrency, Web3, NFTs kind of step in here. And I think a business centered around a Web3 ethos essentially can solve this value alignment paradox by providing this central thing, an NFT or a token, which both the business and the customer both have alignment around increasing the value of. Instead of it being a two-sided thing where kind of people are just not really sure what the value gained on either side is, because again, businesses are black boxes, you open it up and you have transparency and you can create, and I think that taking this same value alignment paradox and applying it to a government could solve a similar problem. If you view a currency, for example, take the euro, there's around about 1 billion people living within Europe, and I think it's very abstract for any individual European citizen to think that anything they're contributing during their day job or entrepreneurial activities actually makes a difference in affecting the value of the euro. It's a very big abstraction there, and I think that the value alignment paradox applies just as much between a given country's citizens and its government as it does to a given business and its customers. So creating a new network state which aligns people in smaller circles. I don't think we're able to kind of handle the abstraction of having 1 billion people in, working towards a given project. We didn't evolve that way. So creating smaller groups of 100,000 or 1 million people aligned around a cryptocurrency within a network state solves that broader question of the value alignment paradox. And again, I think that there's things that already exist that have already proved the demand is there. Take Decentraland, for example. It's a DAO. At one point, it had a market cap of around 5 or 6 billion, made up of around 170,000 parcels of land. And at one point, these were selling for 6,000 or 7,000, even though they had not really any actual use cases, despite people just kind of exploring and experimenting within the metaverse. Take this concept and apply it to the physical world, and I think that and all the rights and laws and that being an independent state comes along with. And I think it kind of changes the conversation. And again, looking at Bored Apes is almost an empire at this point, and people have a very large and expensive NFT, and they've created derivative products off of this. I think there's several hundred businesses now created by Bored Ape members, which all contribute towards the greater good of the collection, and it's how they've stayed on top this whole time, because their members are probably the most aligned out of any NFT collection. And again, I think what this is going to become is the physical manifestation of everything that's already been happening in Web3, which is a network state being created, either a group of 100,000 digital nomads that come together, or 100,000 painters, or 100,000 artists, or 100,000 health enthusiasts. When it happens, I think it will provide the killer use case for Web3 that everybody's been searching for. So yeah, thank you.
Any questions?
So I have more of, not really a real question, but so how, we were actually starting to discuss that yesterday night. So why would a nation state surrender some of their, power, probably not all, not defense, we're not talking about defense, to this? I mean, I understand the economical incentive to attract these people, but why wouldn't they do it on themselves? Why would they surrender some of their
I think it's
authority there?
If you look at this in terms of game theory, essentially it's a zero-sum game. There are 200 countries around the world who are all competing against each other on all kinds of different metrics. There is going to be, if you're not willing to do that and to, apply a little bit of sovereignty or, recognize a small parcel of land within your borders as an independent state, there's going to be a country that is willing to do that. So
why do you need the real estate part of it? Why wouldn't that work without the real estate part?
Just for a network state is essentially the end goal of a network state is to function as a country in a way. And one of the requirements by, for example, the UN or the International Monetary Fund to recognize a country is that it owns a real estate footprint.
With exceptions, like Malta Knights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Historical exceptions.
Yeah, so, I think an organized group of people could get to a point where they have a better way of living. Like the example that Balaji gives in the book is, people who have a founding story of being against the FDA, being against certain medical practices, so they form a new society where all FDA drugs are banned, there's natural medicine, and it's creating that new rule set with an origin story, motivation, alignment between community members. And I think there's a lot of people who'd prefer to live by their rules than other ones. Like, if anybody's read the book Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, it was where the term metaverse was first coined. Within that book, although it's science fiction, there was a pizza place that essentially is an independent country. And so people join the pizza place because they get a fast car and they're contractors. It kind of sets out the principles from which network states arrived at. So in short, I think countries are going to be extremely competitive. And once this potentially does happen, the amounts of money and the GDPs that will be involved will be enough to sway a lot of people.
All right. Thank you. Thank you,
you.
Jose. That was great.